The relationship between Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith has evolved from one of Hollywood's most admired marriages into one of its most publicly dissected personal stories. What once appeared to be a model of celebrity success gradually transformed into a complicated and highly visible examination of love, identity, fame, and emotional survival under constant public scrutiny. For decades, the two represented the image of the modern entertainment power couple. Will Smith rose from West Philadelphia to global superstardom through music, television, and blockbuster films, becoming one of the most commercially successful actors of his generation. Beginning as one half of the Grammy-winning duo DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, he transitioned into television through The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, before dominating the box office with films such as Bad Boys, Independence Day, Men in Black, and I Am Legend. His career was built on charisma, optimism, and a carefully managed image that made him one of Hollywood's safest and most marketable stars. Jada Pinkett Smith developed a very different but equally respected reputation. Raised in Baltimore, Maryland, she entered Hollywood through films like Menace to Society and Set It Off, earning recognition for emotionally intense performances and a personality that projected intelligence, independence, and emotional depth. Her role on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air became historically important not only for her career, but because it introduced her to Will Smith during the mid-1990s. The two married in December 1997 and gradually became symbolic of black excellence within Hollywood. Together, they built a massive family and business empire while raising their children, Jaden Smith and Willow Smith, under extraordinary public attention. For years, they spoke openly about partnership, healing, family, and emotional growth, presenting themselves as a couple deeply committed to redefining traditional ideas about marriage and identity. However, behind the carefully managed public image, cracks were gradually becoming visible. Unlike many celebrity couples who maintained strict privacy, Will and Jada increasingly invited public audiences into their personal struggles through interviews, books, and eventually Jada's Facebook Watch series, Red Table Talk. What initially looked refreshing to many viewers slowly became controversial because the level of openness exposed tensions that most celebrities work aggressively to hide. The first major shift in public perception came during the now infamous July 2020 episode of Red Table Talk, involving singer August Alsina. During the episode, Jada publicly confirmed that she had been involved in what she described as an entanglement with Alsina during a period when she and Will were separated. The conversation instantly became one of the most viral celebrity moments of the decade. Although the couple attempted to present the situation as evidence of healing and honesty, the public reaction became deeply divided. Some praised their willingness to discuss complicated relationship dynamics openly. Others viewed the conversation as uncomfortable and emotionally revealing in ways that damaged Will Smith's public image. The word entanglement immediately became internet slang and cultural shorthand for complicated or unconventional relationships. What intensified the reaction was Will Smith's visible emotional vulnerability during the episode. Audiences were unaccustomed to seeing one of Hollywood's most confident and polished stars appearing emotionally wounded on camera. For many viewers, the moment permanently altered how they viewed both the marriage and Will himself. Instead of representing the untouchable Hollywood power couple, Will and Jada increasingly became associated with emotional complexity, public oversharing, and unconventional relationship structures. That perception deepened further when Will later addressed the marriage in his 2021 memoir, Will. In the book, he explained that Jada never believed in conventional marriage and acknowledged that the two had gradually moved away from traditional monogamy toward what he described as a customized partnership. Those revelations fueled even more public debate because they challenged the image many fans had projected onto the couple for decades. At the same time, Jada continued expanding discussions around emotional healing, trauma, and self-discovery through Red Table Talk. While supporters praised the show for its honesty about mental health, addiction, relationships, and family struggles, critics increasingly accused the couple of transforming deeply personal issues into public performance. The line between authenticity and spectacle became harder for audiences to separate. By the early 2020s, the marriage itself had become larger than the individuals involved. Discussions surrounding Will and Jada were no longer simply celebrity gossip. Their relationship had evolved into a cultural debate about monogamy, masculinity, emotional vulnerability, fame, and whether radical transparency strengthens or destroys public trust. Every interview, appearance, and public comment became analyzed through that lens. The relationship between Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith reached its most explosive public moment during the 94th Academy Awards in March 2022, an event that permanently changed how both the entertainment industry and the general public viewed them. What began as Hollywood's biggest celebration of film quickly turned into one of the most controversial live television moments in modern entertainment history. The incident occurred after comedian Chris Rock made a joke comparing Jada Pinkett Smith's shaved head to the film G.I. Jane. Because Jada had previously spoken publicly about living with alopecia, the joke immediately created visible tension inside the Dolby Theatre. Moments later, Will Smith walked onto the stage and slapped Chris Rock in front of a global audience before returning to his seat and shouting, "Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth." The moment instantly overshadowed the entire ceremony. Within minutes, social media, news organizations, celebrities, and political commentators were debating what had just happened. For some viewers, Will's reaction represented a husband publicly defending his wife against humiliation. For others, it reflected unresolved emotional pressure and instability connected to years of public scrutiny surrounding their marriage. What made the situation even more complicated was the emotional context surrounding Will Smith at that point in his life. Only 2 years earlier, the entanglement episode of Red Table Talk had reshaped public perception of his marriage and masculinity. Since then, internet culture had repeatedly mocked him through memes, commentary videos, and debates about emotional weakness, loyalty, and humiliation. By the time of the Oscars, many observers believed Will was carrying years of public frustration beneath the surface. The irony of the evening became impossible to ignore because only minutes after the slap, Will Smith won the Academy Award for Best Actor for his performance in King Richard. Instead of the night becoming the defining celebration of his career, the victory was consumed almost entirely by the controversy surrounding the assault. During his acceptance speech, Smith apologized to the Academy and fellow nominees, while emotionally defending the idea of protecting family and loved ones. The consequences were immediate and severe. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences banned Will Smith from attending Academy events for 10 years. He later resigned his Academy membership voluntarily and released multiple public apologies directed toward Chris Rock and viewers worldwide. Several film projects connected to him reportedly faced delays or uncertainty as studios assessed the reputational fallout. At the same time, the incident pushed renewed attention onto the marriage itself. Public conversations no longer focused only on the slap. Increasingly, discussions centered on whether years of emotional exposure and public transparency had contributed to the psychological pressure visible during that moment. Critics argued that the marriage had become emotionally performative and unstable under the constant pressure of public commentary. Supporters countered that the couple's willingness to discuss complicated emotional realities openly made them more human than most celebrity relationships. The situation became even more emotionally complicated in 2023, when Jada Pinkett Smith released her memoir, Worthy. In the book and accompanying interviews, she revealed that she and Will had actually been separated since 2016, despite continuing to appear publicly together as husband and wife. The revelation stunned audiences because it meant the couple had already been living completely separate lives for years before the Oscars incident occurred. That revelation fundamentally changed how many people interpreted the slap. What initially looked like a husband instinctively defending his wife suddenly became viewed through a far more complicated emotional lens. Audiences began revisiting the moment, wondering whether it reflected unresolved attachment, emotional obligation, image protection, or deeper struggles connected to identity and public expectation. Jada explained that the separation developed gradually as both of them became exhausted trying to live according to what she described as the Hollywood gospel of marriage and perfection. She emphasized that despite living separately, neither of them had fully abandoned the relationship because they still considered themselves family and remained deeply connected emotionally and professionally. The memoir also introduced additional revelations involving Jada's struggles with depression, suicidal thoughts, ayahuasca experiences, and the emotional pressure created by decades of fame. These disclosures reinforced the idea that both Will and Jada were undergoing personal transformations far more complicated than the public originally understood. Meanwhile, Will Smith largely shifted toward a quieter and more reflective public presence following the Oscars fallout. Interviews, social media posts, and public appearances increasingly emphasized introspection, healing, and spiritual growth, rather than the hyper-confident blockbuster image that had defined his earlier career. For many longtime fans, the contrast between the Fresh Prince persona and the emotionally vulnerable figure emerging after the Oscars became one of the most striking celebrity transformations of the decade. What makes the story of Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith so culturally significant is that their relationship has gradually evolved beyond celebrity gossip into something much larger, a public case study on love, identity, fame, emotional transparency, and the pressure of maintaining an image inside Hollywood for more than 3 decades. By 2025 and 2026, the couple's story no longer centered only on the Oscars slap or the entanglement controversy. Instead, public discussion increasingly focused on how two people who built one of Hollywood's most recognizable partnerships were attempting to redefine their relationship outside traditional expectations. Although they remained legally married, both openly acknowledged living separate lives while still describing themselves as deeply connected through family, business, and emotional loyalty. That dynamic confused many audiences because celebrity culture traditionally depends on simple narratives. Couples are usually presented as either happily together or completely separated. Will and Jada rejected that structure publicly. Rather than announcing a formal divorce, they described their relationship as evolving into something more fluid and personally defined. For supporters, this represented emotional honesty and maturity. For critics, it reinforced perceptions that the relationship had become overly performative and difficult to understand. The tension surrounding their public image intensified because both continued discussing their private lives openly through interviews, memoirs, and public appearances. Jada's memoir Worthy became especially polarizing because of how directly it addressed depression, suicidal thoughts, family struggles, emotional dissatisfaction, and the long separation from Will. Some readers praised the book for its honesty and vulnerability. Others believed it exposed deeply personal aspects of the marriage in ways that further damaged Will Smith's public reputation. At the same time, Will Smith's public identity underwent one of the most dramatic shifts of any major Hollywood star in recent memory. For decades, he represented confidence, charm, and emotional control. Following the Oscars incident and the revelations surrounding the marriage, audiences increasingly viewed him through a lens of vulnerability and emotional exhaustion. The image of the untouchable global superstar gave way to a more complicated portrait of someone struggling publicly with identity, loyalty, pressure, and personal reinvention. That transformation also affected how people interpreted their earlier years together. Moments once viewed as inspirational or romantic became re-examined retrospectively. Fans revisited old interviews, public appearances, and statements searching for signs of emotional strain that may have existed long before the controversies became public. In many ways, the relationship turned into a cultural mirror through which audiences projected their own beliefs about masculinity, marriage, sacrifice, emotional boundaries, and fame. Another major reason their story continues dominating entertainment conversations is because it intersects with changing cultural attitudes toward privacy. Earlier generations of Hollywood stars carefully protected their personal lives behind publicists and studio systems. Will and Jada instead embraced radical openness, particularly through platforms like Red Table Talk. That strategy created extraordinary audience intimacy, but also removed many of the emotional boundaries that traditionally separate celebrity image from private reality. The result is that audiences now feel deeply emotionally invested in the outcome of their relationship, even while disagreeing intensely about what the relationship actually represents. Some view them as brave figures attempting to redefine partnership outside rigid social expectations. Others interpret the entire situation as evidence of Hollywood excess, emotional instability, and public oversharing taken too far. Despite the criticism, both Will and Jada continue emphasizing family unity publicly. They still appear together occasionally for family events, support their children's careers, and remain connected through business ventures such as Westbrook Inc. Their continued presence beside one another complicates attempts to define the relationship in traditional terms because they repeatedly reject clear labels about whether they are fully together, separated, or something in between. The emotional complexity of their story ultimately reflects a larger truth about celebrity culture itself. Fame often rewards perfection publicly, while quietly placing enormous psychological pressure on personal relationships behind the scenes. In the case of Will and Jada, decades of global visibility transformed private struggles into worldwide conversation topics analyzed constantly across television, podcasts, social media, and entertainment journalism. As of 2026, their marriage remains one of the most polarizing and discussed relationships in modern entertainment because it challenges traditional ideas about love, loyalty, separation, and identity. Whether audiences see their transparency as courageous or excessive, the relationship has already become historically significant within celebrity culture. The story of Will and Jada is no longer simply about a Hollywood couple surviving controversy. It has become a public reflection of how fame, vulnerability, and emotional evolution collide when personal lives unfold under constant observation from the entire world.